Many of the polls got it wrong this presidential election. Now, many in the polling industry are looking to see where they went wrong and how they can get more accurate results in the future. Let's talk about what happened with polling expert John Johnson with Edgeworth Economics and the author of the book, Everydata.
Not that simple to disentangle. I mean, yes, as an overall sort of big picture issue, it is the case that far fewer Democrats came out to vote this year for Hillary Clinton as opposed to turnout for Barack Obama. But that's a sort of oversimplified narrative, and you can look at a few key places to see why that is. Pennsylvania, which turned out to be a really critical state, Hillary Clinton actually improved on the vote totals amongst Democrats in places like Philadelphia. But that was exceeded by a really phenomenal performance in terms of turnout by rural voters in the rest of the state for Donald Trump. Same in Florida, a slightly different story, but Hillary Clinton did very well in sort of the traditional Democratic areas of the state, but Donald Trump had a huge surge of support in areas they call the exurbs, sort of these suburban areas. And so those kind of turnout issues are where the polls really have to look more closely next time to sort of make sure they capture them in their models.
And as this election, we saw a lot of people talking about it on social media and different sites, but there also were a lot of people who didn't want to talk about how they felt about the candidates. And could that have been a problem for pollsters, voters not expressing their thoughts anywhere else other than on the ballot?
Absolutely. I mean, one of, I think, the really hard questions that the entire industry has to deal with is simply so long polls were done by phone. You had, it started with what was called random digit dialing, where you had, the equivalent of phone books and sort of pick people. Then cell phones got into the mix, and that started to change things. Now, a lot of pollsters have to think about how do we actually reach the people that are going to talk to us, and do they want to actually answer the questions? And so that's called the response rate in many of these surveys. And, I saw some polls leading up to the election where I saw response rates being reported that were 2 or 3%. People didn't want to talk about it. So because of the saturation of polls, I always use the state of New Hampshire as a good example of this. New Hampshire is a fairly tiny state. There are people polling all the time. I don't know that you could live in the state of New Hampshire and not have someone ringing your phone constantly. So if you're not getting the information, if people aren't responding, that's going to be a problem as well. And so we're going to have to think about other methods. Some agencies are trying to do internet polling or trying to do internet samples where they actually have collected people that opt in and then they can sort of follow them over time. But I do think it's going to be a huge issue for the scientists to sort of think about how do we apply the science of polling going forward.
John Johnson, author of the book Everydata.